What is going on, people? Welcome. It is time for another edition of Unfiltered. This one officially go down as episode number 297 in your scorecard. You can jump on board 24/7, 365. It's easy. Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts, of course, Twitter, Instagram, as well. As always, we're presented by Bet Online, number one source for your sports betting needs. All the latest lines, matchup reports, baseball, basketball, boxing, golf, and more. It's easy to do. Head over to the website, use your mobile device today, get in on the action, but use that promo code BELIEVE, BLEV. It'll get you 50% bonus on your first deposit as we get started here. Welcome in a guy I haven't talked to in a while, but used to follow around plenty, especially during his days with the Royals when they, if not for Mad Bum, would have had not one but two World Series championships. Now he's a champion in retirement. And I want to talk about Moonball Media and his Digging Deep podcast. Of course, we're talking about Eric Hosmer. Dude, I'm so happy to have you on board, man. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, appreciate you, Case. I haven't seen you in a while, so it's fun to get on this little Zoom, whatever we got going on here, and talk some ball and just talk about what we got going on.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I got to start here. What made you, and I want to get into the retirement in a minute, but what made you start Moonball Media and to get into a podcast in the podcast world with Digging Deep? I mean, what was the impetus of all of that for you?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the name of your show right now, Unfiltered, I think that is something that I think from the players' side in a new day and age now where there's a little more of this player-driven media, I think that's something that I'm really going to enjoy. And I think that's something that I wasn't really going to sign up for anything like this unless I can be completely unfiltered and just be my authentic self and really just give a deep dive into what I think is happening in the game, get to highlight some of these young players that I think don't get enough credit in our game today. So just a little bit of everything, man. But at the same time, I really want to just help, continue to show the fans how baseball is, how the players are, and continue to market our game any way I can.
And it's player driven. I know you've got Peter Moylan. You guys are doing a weekly now, and into that, you've had some great guests. The one with Wash and EY Senior is amazing. You got Manny, I know Moose, and a lot of guys. Bobby Witt Jr. for the Royal fans listening. For those who have not seen it, again, you could also get it on X if you're not on YouTube and watching it or listening. Everywhere you get your podcast at Deep Pod, and so give it a follow. What's been the hardest part about doing a podcast? Getting on the other side, you got interviewed a million times during your career, but what's been the hardest part of doing this so far?
The hardest part in the beginning was getting to the point to ask guys to come on. The last thing I wanted to do was call a guy, "Hey man, how you doing? Can you come on my podcast? Is that cool with you?" Blah blah blah. It's a lot harder when you're trying to explain to people what you have going on. I think now that we've released some of the episodes, some of the players get to see the format, kind of how everything runs. I think it's now a lot easier, but that was definitely the biggest hurdle for me was just initially asking them to come on and not wanting to be that guy. But it's something now that a lot of players, especially in different sports, are doing a lot. But I think now the baseball world is starting to catch up to that.
Yeah, one thing I could say, it doesn't matter how long, and I'm doing this over 20 years, no matter how long you were in the media, no matter what kind of relationship with players and friends in the industry, and I have them as well, there's a difference peer to peer, right? Difference between a player talking to a player. You guys know what it takes, what it is to go through all that behind the scenes. It creates different content, right? I mean, the conversations are different when you're talking to players than you're talking to the media. That's one of the special parts, I think, of the pod and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, certainly. And that's where I think, when we say the unfiltered part, I think that's something that the player-to-player relationship, I think players are certainly a little more comfortable in expressing themselves in certain ways when it comes to player-to-player. But at the same time, the player-to-media relationship, there's a lot of people out there that, yeah, they say there's a lot of bad media. There's a lot of stuff that's written about guys that aren't true. But at the same time, there's a lot of good media out there. There's a lot of media members that, I remember going on the season tour, making certain stops, getting able to catch up with certain guys like yourself, and to have that player media interaction and just debate whatever that is, I think is fun in itself. And I think that gives the fan a different perspective, and just being able to hear conversations like that will open up eyes for our game. And, I think our game's in a weird spot now where a lot of baseball fans are focused on the wrong things. There's contract stuff, there's CBA holdouts, agreements, all that type of stuff. So I'm just trying to relate to that baseball fan that wants to continue to learn about the game, and enlighten themselves about the game. And hopefully we can bring the focus back to that.
Yeah, it also enables you to stay engaged. Like I see you tweeting all the time and kind of in touch now with the game from this side. Has that helped? Because in talking to guys about retirement over the years, you don't miss necessarily, all the preparation, all the work and what it does to your body, and 18 days off in a 6-month span. You've got a little one with another one on the way, but you miss the camaraderie. You miss the X's and O's of being involved in the game. Have you felt some of that, first of all? And does it help at least staying engaged this way for you to get that fix, if you will, a little bit of adrenaline being involved in the game?
Yeah, it definitely does. Some of the guys that I reached out to that were retired players, I kind of asked them for advice, and they say, if you want to continue to be involved in the game, don't go too far away, because it's harder to be removed for 2-3 years and then try and become, back in the game, whether it's coaching or covering the game in any certain way. So this opportunity really feels for me like I'm still connected with the game. I still get to talk about the game and all that. And then, of course, the locker room stuff, the interactions in the locker room, going back and forth with the guys, having fun on a day-to-day basis is something that, I'll definitely miss the most as a player. And that's where it's been fun on X to be able to interact with fans and, get to give them some real answers, some unguarded answers on how I feel about certain things. Or, even last Sunday, Case and my son were out all day. I got to watch baseball all day. So I'm watching games, firing off on X, having some fun interactions with fans. So it's been a lot of fun so far in the beginning.
You retire at, you still got, I say this from my end, I'm not saying this because you're here. You still got plenty of left. You could have kept playing. You're 34, right? I think at this point, I think we both got birthdays in October. I think you're 34 still.
Mm-hmm.
I won't give my age. But how long did it take to come to that? Because I'm sure I imagine it like, and you tell me I'm wrong, right? It's like we've all been through breakups and relationships with other humans. This is like the greatest breakup of all, when an athlete makes that decision. But we all know that him and Ha before a breakup of am I ready? Do I give it more time? Will it get better? How do I'll sleep it off? Do I all that? How long did you him and Ha before you knew, or was there like a moment where?
Yeah, so my situation was unique. I obviously I got released at the end of May, so I had really another 4 months that end of that season to kind of slow everything down. And ultimately, I came to a point where I appreciate every single roster spot on what these teams are allowed to have, those roster spots in the league. I definitely appreciate those spots, and I just simply came to a point where I felt like there was opportunity to go out, and I could have definitely fought for a position this spring and try and make a club that way. But for me, I want to make an impact on the game. Towards the end of my career, I found myself doing that a lot in that role player position, being able to talk to young guys on the bench, being able to kind of keep them ready for when their opportunity came. So for me, honestly, it just became a point where, I just felt like I was a little more valuable than that 26th man on the roster, that I wanted to find a way to reach the game and help impact the game in a bigger way. So for me, this is the perfect opportunity for that. Not only now do I get to continue to have that dialogue with the guys that I've played with, the guys that are able to reach out via text, whatever it is. Now I get to expand that. Now I get to, have a young guy log on to YouTube, be able to watch, be able to see certain things. I can have a young coach be able to log on to YouTube, whatever it is, pick up on certain things to coach their young players. So ultimately it came down to that. Like you said, it was, it took me about 2 hours to get my body ready to go hit a 10-15 flips. So it came to the point where I wanted to make an impact, continue to make an impact on the game, and I just felt like this was the best way for me, and something I really got to think out for a long time. And ultimately, I'm at peace with the decision, and I'm enjoying it.
I remember spending a ton of time time, obviously, when it was with SiriusXM basis and then covering it Turner playoff runs and with City. And one of the things that always struck me was actually not even that. It was a conversation I had with Dayton Moore at spring training and Surprise in like 2009, where he was laying out how 4 or 5 years from now, when he was right on, how all of this core was going to develop and grow. And then they were going to add other pieces. And then the ownership would give them the chance to push the pedal, which they did once you guys were ready. And you know how it look from my standpoint, it all sounds great, right? But it normally doesn't work out that way. How early on, when you're sitting there, part of that young core, you guys are all coming up together. How early on did you individually, Haz, and as your group, did you guys know you had a chance to do something special?
I mean, I don't know if we ever really knew early on. I think we just wanted to make the playoffs so bad. And I think that was such a huge goal for all of us to eventually make the playoffs in Kansas City. They haven't been back since, 1985. It's been a really long time. The second half of 2013, we opened up on the road and we had about a 10-day road trip. We went like 9-1, ended up rolling through the second half. We have the best record in 13 in the second half, don't make the playoffs. I think that second half gave us confidence in 2014 to understand, hey, like we don't worry about who we're playing. If we can play our brand of baseball, that's good enough to be able to secure a playoff spot. 2014, we eventually go do that. 14 and 15, you're kind of just lost in the sauce, head down, moving on from one game to the next, don't really realize what you're accomplishing. And then now looking back on it, especially as an older player, now as an ex-player, you understand the process, you understand what the vision was. But I think going through it, especially in Kansas City, you don't really understand. And that's why, all of us players, we all look up to Dayton Moore as one of the biggest, we idolize him as one of the biggest pieces of person in this game that we really try and, learn from and continue to seek advice from. And he never got off that vision. And there's so many day-to-day things that can make you come off that vision. But, he stuck with it for the 3-4 years and we got good results because of it.
When it is rare to have and I think about the late Tony Gwynn in San Diego, you think about Cal, right, in Baltimore. We all have growing up as fans of this game, which you were first and foremost and still are, between players and cities, right? And what that is like. Your group and you individually and all of you guys have such a relationship that will be defined forever in Kansas City. Just to, now that you've had time, because it's tough during your career, Huz, right? And then you're in San Diego and you're still working on your craft and you're trying to win with a different franchise. Now, have you had time to kind of look back and think about just how special that relationship is that you guys will always have forever imprinted in Kansas City?
Yeah, we definitely do. And I always find myself certain nights logging on YouTube and just kind of going through those playoff highlights and reliving those fun moments. I really do. But it's going to be fun now because this year is the first year that a lot of us are going to go back to Kansas City. We're going to have a 10-year reunion for the 2014 team, the team that won the American League and, lost to the Giants like we were talking about earlier. So this is going to be the first opportunity for all of us to really go as ex-players, as retired players, and get to not only have fun at the stadium, but have fun throughout the community, throughout the city, get to catch up with some people that we haven't seen there in a long time. A lot of us players had a lot of strong relationships with, parents, kids, whoever it was in the community that, we got to know over the years. So this will really be the first time we get to go back and not only hang out at Kauffman, but hang out outside the field. And I know a lot of us are looking forward to it.
Yeah, I bet. And it is kind of a space. Is there a certain moment that stands out? I mean, outside of winning the World Series, which clearly is going to be in a category of its own, and I'll even take kind of the pit out. Is there another moment for whatever reason that maybe is not the one that Royals fans watching or listening or that I might kind of think of? Is there a moment or two that always stick out when you go into your own personal, YouTube file in your brain and think about some of what went on during those years?
Yeah, so in 2014, after we won the first series against the Angels, we won the last game at home. So, Gerard Dyson, Johnny Giavatello, we all lived together in an apartment. So we're heading back home. We're, wanting to go out and celebrate and have some fun with the fans. So we come up with a genius idea of tweeting to the fans that we're going to go to a bar and we're all going to have fun and hang out there. And, we expected it to be a pretty good turnout, but when we roll up to this bar, I mean, there's police escorting us into it. There's the whole entire power and light district is slammed with people. So I think that kind of opened up our eyes to like, man, we did not realize what we were going to get ourselves into. And we don't realize how many people are following us and how big this fan base is and how fun this is. So I think that moment instantly we realized kind of what was happening on a bigger stage and how many people really truly are locked into this run that we're on right now. And that was a lot of fun. That's definitely something that sticks out in my mind.
What when you go to San Diego, there are look, they've had times in their franchise where they haven't. First of all, it's the most gorgeous city in the city or anywhere else. People don't get mad at, but I used to say I wish that every winter meetings and every all San Diego, it's gorgeous, right? But there have been kind of mixed expectations in the past. You get there and expectations get very high and get very high to win. And you've been there before. And there were a couple others on the team who had, but a lot of the players had not been there before. When you kind of look back, because you had some successes, but didn't have the ultimate success, how do you kind of look back on your run and that group's run in San Diego during the years you were there?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the goal is to win, right? So if you don't win, then that's a failure of what the vision is. So that's certainly where my head is at on that. That we didn't win, so the goal wasn't accomplished. But at the end of the day, it was a unique experience for me. It was different. I was going as an older player, going into a locker room where I didn't know many guys, so it was big for me to try and create a culture there. And a lot of people think it was trying to change a culture. I was trying to create a culture because there wasn't guys that had much big league experience. There wasn't guys that knew how things operated on a big league level. So I really took a likening to meshing with these young guys, really trying to create some type of culture over there and have an expectation of winning. And I think it got to a point there where there was an expectation of winning, and I think a lot of these young guys that have either came up with San Diego or got traded on somewhere else have had successful big league careers, and that's cool to see. But ultimately the goal was to win. We didn't do it. I showed spurts of some good production on the field, but ultimately the overall production of what I envisioned before I'd signed there didn't meet that. So that's something I'm obviously disappointed in. But at the end of the day, you can only control what you can control. And, I still have a lot of close relationships with not only the players, but people in the community of San Diego. And it's a place, like you said, it's beautiful, and I'll always love to go back and visit.
There are, and I wanted to ask you about this. There are people who are watching and listening of all kinds of different jobs, and everybody's got families. And I say that because nobody's standing outside of any office and having people tweet. And this is what the camaraderie is like. This is what the rapport is like. This is what the culture is like within that office, because that would sound, and it is stupid. I mean, who would know outside of who's in that room? And the same thing with families. I mean, everybody internalizes and knows what they're dealing with, but they don't have to deal with millions of people kind of deciding. You dealt with this more in San Diego than in Kansas City because that group was so tight knit and kind of grew up together. But you see this now covering it and watching it. We all, as a media and now fans, because you got people in their mom's basement sitting there deciding on X, how's it being fair on what's going on with every team. As a player and now as a former player, how frustrating is that when you're going through it, when a team has ups and downs and a media or a city or fans are trying on the outside to decide what's going on in a room when they have no idea what's going on in a room?
Yeah, and that's what's fun about the situation I'm in now is I get to kind of be that voice for the player and share a perspective that's unfiltered and what I think and believe is truly going on, because I had been through situations like this, and one that this is what motivated me to do something like this. And an instant in 2022 when I get traded at the trade deadline, so I get a call at 8 a.m. saying I'm going to get traded. We don't know where to yet, but there's a deal that I'm involved with, and Juan Soto's involved with it at the same time. So then the process is, okay, there's 4 minor league players that are going to be traded, and there's a pool of big league players, myself, Luke Voigt, Will Myers. So they're going to pick one of those 3 guys in the big league pool, and then those 4 prospects are going with the deal. So I have an opt-out or a no-trade clause, and I get to choose whether or not I want to go to DC, and I decline that option. Nothing against Rizzo or Davey out there. It's just, I'm at the end of my career. I want another opportunity to win. I understand that they have a lot of young guys, and like this year, we'll have success and we'll have that opportunity to win eventually. But for me and where I was in my career, it just didn't match up. And, from about 9 o'clock that morning to the trade deadline, I think a lot of people in San Diego felt that I was the one holding up the trade with Juan Soto coming to San Diego. And it just wasn't the truth. And as a player, I really want to, share that my voice. I want to have a platform and explain my side of the story on what's happening, but you simply just don't. So I think now in the baseball space and what I'm trying to do from Moonball Media and Digging Deep, I can be that voice for players. I can, kind of share that insight to fans on what might be happening. And, at the end of the day, there's a lot of accountability on the players, which understandably so there should be, but there's really no accountability on front office moves that are being made, on managerial moves that are being made. And at the end of the day, it's not every organization is truly trying to win out there. And I think a lot of fans don't really know that and don't have that insight from anybody but, whoever their source is for media and that local, whoever's the beat writer or whoever's covering that team.
Yeah, I'd throw in umpires into accountability, but I don't want to get into it. This would be the umpteenth conversation about Angel Hernandez I would have had in the past week. So we'll curb that for now. It is interesting what you say, because you're right, because even in Kansas City, right, and I saw it in Cleveland too, when you were sitting there playing in that division, and when they were then the Indians and they pushed the pedal. We saw two teams who weren't in big markets, right? They weren't expected to spend all the money. But when it came down to it, those owners stepped up and they pushed the pedal and made deals. And you, as in the guys, did that for a couple of years, where you took on contracts that maybe people thought that you wouldn't. Made trades. When I think about the Cueto deal, where that's a rental, and how are you trading three lefties that could be here forever, and other teams would never do things like that. How much do you admire as a player being a part of an organization that, even though it was a smaller market, Haas did that? And do you look at as a player sometimes other organizations and say, when you're playing against them, man, they could be a lot better. They clearly got the money. Why aren't they pushing the talk about the players over there? I was talking about the Pirates sitting there. They got Andrew McCutchen, who's an MVP candidate. They're on the doorstep year after year, and they never did things like you guys did in Kansas City. Is that frustrating to see as a player when you realize, because you probably got friends on these other teams, they're pedal down in south, whether that bank account is?
Yeah, and I think that's something that later on in my career, I got to understand a lot more. Our situation in Kansas City being a small market team, Dayton Moore didn't have the ability to go out every offseason and sign someone to 100, 200, $300 million contracts and continue to make big moves like that. So really, he went all in with his chips and believed in our group that we were ready at that point in time, that I'm going to go all in, trade a lot of these young quality players that we're developing to get quality big league arms back. And that's what sacrifice you have to make being a small market team. You let go of players like Will Myers and pitchers like Sean Manaea, because you have to get the Zobrist, the James Shields, the Wade Davis, the Johnny Cuetos. So I think that level of appreciation for that small market vision and what Dayton, the cards that he was played and how he had to operate, you have a much more, you appreciate it that much more, because at the end of the day, he doesn't have the ability to go out and spend crazy money. This is what he has to do, and it's limited. So I think it was the perfect time for it. And you understand the years after, when there's not guys coming up ready to play in the big leagues or ready to go and start in the big leagues, you understand you had to trade some of those pieces away to create, big league arms to go right in your rotation. So yeah, you learn about all this stuff more as a player. You get to learn a lot of the business side on the back end of it, especially when you go through that first arbitration and then free agency. You learn so much on the business side.
Looking to I just kind of funneling back to Digging Deep, because I know now you're doing weekly. I saw you and Moylan are doing some weekly stuff. So you're advancing your podcast, or you're watching this on YouTube, to at Digging Deep Pod, and get over there and give a follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube as well, and go get the podcast. Are you looking to do, because Moonball Media, that's better than just a podcast. Are you looking to do more? I mean, what's what's the, yeah, I'm not trying to ask you your five, but what are you looking to do? What's kind of the end goal when you think from a media standpoint? Because correct me if I'm wrong, I think I saw in the description originally when you kind of came out with it, you're thinking maybe documentaries and things beyond podcasts. So what's kind of the end goal? What are you looking to do as you kind of piece this moonball side of this together?
Yeah, so Anthony Saratelli was a teammate of mine in the minor leagues with the Royals. He ended his playing career in 2015, so he went in to the production side of this business and had been in it for about 10 plus years. So he and I stayed tight. We were always close friends. Got to catch up on the road whenever I was in New York or whenever we were in the same city. So we always had this vision of doing stuff, of telling these stories, and we're telling the stories in every which way. You know, obviously my my main expertise area is going to be with the podcast and talking baseball on there. We have a documentary coming out with Cal Ripken being the executive producer on it. So we have a lot of different ways we're going to tell these stories, and I'm really excited for it because I think there's certain people in the baseball world that we really want to shine a light on and explain how impressive something was that they accomplished or did. And we're going to have every which way to explain that. So it's going to be a fun project for all of us.
I'm looking forward to continuing to watch it develop, and everybody listening or watching, please again, and we'll tweet this out as well. Get out to at Moonball Media, at Digging Deep Pod. Check out the podcast everywhere you can get them on your platforms, and also on YouTube. There's a channel there as well. Give it a follow, like, and subscribe. Haas, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for a few.
Yeah, Case. Thanks, man. Let's do it again.
We will. Unfiltered, as always, you could do many different ways. Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast, jump in. Twitter, X, we're also on Instagram, at Unfiltered with Casey Stern YouTube channel as well. As always, we at Unfiltered are presented by our good friends at BetOnline.